a new poll on how Icelanders feel about tourists, a new volcano, a bullied bird, and more on this episode of the Reykjavík News Desk. First up on the Reykjavík News Desk, the latest threat to Reykjavík's only forest is getting people up in arms again. As I reported, Andie Sophia, which amongst other things operates Keflavik International Airport, wants the city of Reykjavík to cut down some 3,000 trees at Öskjuhlíð, which is the wooded area upon which rests the Petlan restaurant/museum. Now, this is our only forested area within downtown Reykjavík, and people really love this forest of Öskjuhlíð very much. And one really good indicator in Iceland about how the locals feel about any given issue is Facebook groups. You see, Icelanders love Facebook, and there is a Facebook group for every town, every village, and every neighborhood in the entire country. And the Facebook group for Hlíðar, which is the neighborhood that contains Öskjuhlíð, the residents there are really not happy about this idea of cutting down the trees. Some of them are talking about banding together and forming an activist group to help defend the forest from destruction. Now, Minister of the Interior, Sigurður Ingi Johansson, has also chimed in on the matter, and he says that he understands that people like the trees, but he believes that airline safety is more important than this. You see, the reason why Andie Sophia wants the city of Reykjavík to cut down these trees is that they say that some of these trees have grown so tall that when the planes come in for a landing, they need to do so at a steeper angle. Well, some other options have been offered apart from just cutting down these trees, such as replacing these trees with smaller trees, which can't grow as tall. Another idea has been to move the runway in question further west. Now, to his credit, the minister has said that he's willing to consider this idea of extending the runway westward, but one thing that he did not mention is the very simple solution that I've brought up several times before, and that is to move the domestic airport out of downtown Reykjavík. Well, that's not likely to happen with this minister. You see, Sigurður Ingi is from the Progressive Party, and the Progressive Party's base is rural Iceland, and rural Icelanders predominantly favor keeping the domestic airport in downtown Reykjavík because it's very convenient for them, regardless of what those of us who live in this town might have to say on the matter. So, yeah, airport's not going anywhere this election term, in other words. The humanitarian crisis created by our government is heating up. As I reported in my last video, changes made to the law on foreigners last spring included a provision wherein if someone applying for international protection has their application rejected, they have to leave the country within 30 days or they are cut off access from essential services such as healthcare and shelter and food. Importantly, they do not have the legal right to work in Iceland. They want to work in Iceland, but the law prevents them from doing so. Furthermore, they do have the legal right to appeal their cases in Icelandic court of law, but that's pretty hard to do when you're on the street. My previous video goes into a lot more detail about how this particular law was poorly planned and makes things a lot more complicated, how it's going to end up costing taxpayers more money than the current system, and how it possibly breaks human rights laws. But the current flashpoint right now is the fact that there are 50 human beings who have been rendered houseless by this law. Who's to take care of them? Well, that's the problem. The government, which never bothered consulting with local authorities on this matter last spring when they were preparing this bill, contends that it's up to municipalities to take care of these folks, whereas the municipalities contend that they don't have the legal framework to do so. And more people have joined the fray. Some 23 NGOs, including the Red Cross, UNICEF, and the Bishop of Iceland, have called for a meeting with the government to work out some kind of plan to be able to take care of these folks. Now, current Minister of Justice Guðrún Hafsteinsdóttir has floated the idea of what she calls a residential solution with limitations, but this is not likely to happen. First of all, this idea has gotten a lot of criticism as essentially being a prison. Second of all, other members of parliament have pointed out that the left Greens, who lead the government, are very opposed to this idea, so it's not likely that this idea is going to go forward. And that's especially the case because there is a lot of tension between the three parties of the ruling coalition right now. That is, the left Greens, who lead the government, the Independence Party, who push for the changes to this immigration law, and the Progressive Party. These tensions are so great, in fact, that I had spoken to a member of parliament last Saturday for a completely unrelated matter, and they told me that sometimes it feels like the government's going to fall apart tomorrow. So things are really delicate right now. So it doesn't look like that this residential solution with limitations is going to go anywhere. All this being said, there are real people with real lives who need help right now and cannot wait until elections. So once again, I've linked in the description below to a volunteer humanitarian organization called Solaris, and there you will see ways in which you can make donations to them, whether you live in Iceland or not. And hopefully this matter can be resolved soon because there are real lives at stake here. In other news, hey, did you miss the eruption? Cheer up, because we're probably going to get another one real soon. Although, unfortunately, it's not going to be like a 5-minute drive from Keflavik International Airport. I'm talking about Askja, which is a very pretty volcanic crater in a pretty remote part of East Iceland. Well, this crater has been showing signs of volcanic activity. Again, there's been some seismic activity recorded in the area. They've even detected volcanic gases in the crater itself. But the problem is this. Askja is a very popular tourist destination, but the phone reception in the area is either poor or non-existent, and the roads going to and from Askja are not really easy to navigate. As a result of this, some tour companies have been calling upon the telecoms to improve the phone reception in that area, and although the telecoms have been reluctant, that could change, and hopefully it will, because as I said, it's a very popular tourist spot, and it would not be great if there were a bunch of people standing at this crater when a volcano starts to kick off. So, as you may have heard, the World Chess Federation, FIDE, has ruled that trans women cannot compete against cis women in the Women's World Chess Championship for reasons that are both transphobic and sexist, so they managed to insult all kinds of women simultaneously. Great job. Anyway, Icelanders love themselves some chess, and they've been, frankly, baffled by this decision. Even the head of the Icelandic Chess Association believes that FIDE made the wrong decision in this case. And he went on to add that he believes men are naturally better at chess. And just, dude, you could have just stopped talking. Anyway, he believes that the Federation's decision was based on this idea of men's natural superiority over women when it comes to chess, and that it's possible that a man could just say, I'm a woman, in order to compete against women in chess and just trounce them at the game. So let me just clear things up here. No one has or ever will do this. Yeah, in fact, the head of the Icelandic Chess Association says that he knows of absolutely no examples of anyone even attempting to pull this off. And that's because we don't go through the process of wrestling with medical bureaucracy, sitting on waiting lists for years, going through hormonal treatment and possibly surgery, and subjecting ourselves to being targets of discrimination and hate just to win at sports. No, we do it to disappoint our parents. I'm just kidding. My parents are very supportive of me. Are you, or have you ever been, a tourist in Iceland? Ever wonder what Icelanders really think of you? Well, listen up, because a new poll just dropped. According to the latest poll from Maskina, some 14% of Icelanders have a negative opinion of tourists, and that's up sharply from 6% last year and the year before that. In fact, you would need to go back as far as 2017 to find similar figures, and even then, only 10% of Icelanders reported feeling negatively towards tourists. What gives? Well, consider that in 2020, the pandemic started, and we saw a sharp decrease in tourism. There were very, very few people coming into the country. But 2023, by contrast, was already headed to be a record year in terms of tourism before the volcano even erupted. In other words, the contrast has just been very jarring, and it's just something that we need to get used to again. So cheer up. 86% of the country still likes you and wants you here, and that number will likely grow, so please don't take it personally. Apart from chess, Icelanders also love picking wild berries. This is a very popular late summer holiday wherein Icelanders will go out into the countryside and pick blueberries and crowberries and red currants. Well, this year has been pretty awful for the berry harvest, at least here in the Southwest, because we received the 1-2 punch of a cold late spring, but a very dry summer. And yeah, this is very disappointing. I have 4 large red currant bushes in my backyard, and I don't think I'm going to be able to get a single jar of jam out of them this year. So fingers crossed for next summer, I guess. Finally, on the Reykjavík news desk, an almost mythical creature has been spotted in the northwest of the country, an all-white loon. This is not an albino loon, mind you, but rather this is a bird with a condition known as leucism, wherein the feathers turn all white. And while this may be fascinating to us humans, leucism can be dangerous and traumatizing to these birds. For example, it makes them harder for these birds to hide from predators and from prey alike. Furthermore, in more social species, there's a tendency for leucism to result in the bird in question being ostracized, which may have actually happened to this loon, because this loon has always been spotted completely alone. Now, I've linked to the full article in the description below because there's a very nice photo gallery of this loon. So let's all hope that this poor little guy can make friends soon. And that's all I have for you today on the Reykjavík News Desk. Be sure and like and subscribe. And just so you know, last Saturday's Ask Me Anything session is now up for public viewing on my Patreon. Now, the Ask Me Anything session is something for my patrons, wherein, yes, they do ask me questions, but mostly it's just a chance for all of us to hang out and have a laugh. We always have a good time, and it'd be great to see you there. Which reminds me that the next Ask Me Anything session will be Saturday, September 16th at 1600 GMT, or noon Eastern Standard Time. Furthermore, the next viewer poll is now up on my Patreon. Now, the viewer poll is a poll, as the name would suggest, wherein patrons decide what single topic they want to see me drill into in my next single topic video. The last viewer poll decided video was my hitchhiking memoirs, and so I'm really looking forward to seeing what my viewers decide I do a video about next. And both the Ask Me Anything and the viewer poll and much more are available by signing up for my Patreon, which is linked in the description below. Which reminds me, I want to thank Corinne Vasquez, Marianne Ward, Christopher Hunter, Marianne Moores, Kimberly McDaniel, Iceman98, Octavia Hrund-Jonsdottir, and Alan Vagome for being patrons on the $20 level, Ian Kingsley and Laura Johnson for being patrons on the $15 level, and Melissa Pfeffer, Christine Trowbridge, Hafstein Himmellomi, Regenusson, Stephen Ellis, and Vivi Carvajal Schaffner for being patrons on the $10 level. You folks rock. That's all from me at News Desk. Be good to each other.